Hello, welcome back to the Kindness Code podcast. My name is Carmel Sawbury and I'm thrilled to be with the wonderful Jane Keenan, who has had 37 years in the industry, has a wealth of knowledge, has books, had podcasts, is involved in an exciting new project helping create memories for young people in care. Welcome, Jane.
My pleasure to be here, Carmel. Always happy to chat.
Brilliant. Really looking forward to this conversation. I've just got some questions because I feel like you're going to be really good at giving interesting answers. So hopefully my questions are up to it, and I think we're just going to jump straight in.
Please do.
So, you're 37 years in children's social care. When you look back, what shifted most in you, not in the sector, but in you, about how to actually help a child?
What shifted most in me about how to help the child? Okay. So great question, because the thing that each of us can individually bring to most help children in the system is ourselves. The thing I can most valuably bring is myself. And I can't leave any parts of myself at the door when I show up. So the more awareness I have of myself, my unresolved issues, my strengths, the better able I am to harness those in the service of the children I'm here to help. Because if I can't leave them at the door, they're coming with me. And if I bring any unresolved needs, if my self-awareness is not sharp enough, if I'm carrying my own baggage without even really knowing it's there, then I'm bringing that baggage into my attempts to serve our children. So what shifted in me the most? A never-ending enhancing of my self-awareness, knowing myself more in order to harness what I bring rather than letting it get in the way. I'm going to stop there because I could keep chatting, so I'll interrupt myself as we go.
Well, it's fascinating because I've sat in quite a few interviews when we've taken on youth mentors, and what has been deeply humbling is that so many people come to this sector to make a difference, and we ask them a question about their childhood and their parents' parenting style, and most of the time they share something which is quite sad or they've had their challenges. So how do people come into work with care with all the most beautiful heart-led beliefs and desire to do the right thing? How do they use that in practice when they walk in knowing they've got stuff? How do they do that when they walk through the door to work with our kids?
So the starting point is to acknowledge and accept that you have stuff and that you might have some clues about what that stuff is, and there might be other stuff lurking in the shadows that hasn't entered your awareness yet. And then find those reflective environments. Be proactive in your own development. Don't wait for somebody to pay for you to go on a course. Don't wait for somebody to pay for you to do your therapy. If you're in an environment, and hopefully everybody is, but we know everybody isn't, if you're in an environment that provides reflective space and reflective supervision and maybe skilled consultancy, that kind of thing, turn up for that. Turn up, take every opportunity to go into safe, healthy, supportive, reflective space and make good use of it by being willing to look into your own shadows. And some of that work-based reflective space is gonna scratch at some things that might be better served in a more private, personal therapy. So don't be afraid of that. Embrace that. Go to therapy or go to whatever provision of other supportive services calls on you, because there's a bunch of ways of doing that. And bring the honesty about your own needs, because if you're honest about your own needs and finding ways to meet them for yourself, you're going to bring them into the work, which is the therapeutic environment, to meet the needs of the children, and your own needs are going to get in the way of meeting the needs of the children. Whereas if you recognize your own needs and find ways of meeting them for yourself, then you can harness the skills and the strengths and the attributes that have come from the experiences that led to your own needs. You can harness all of that stuff and put it to work in the service of helping our kids.
I love that, just recognising it, self-learning, and kind of the understanding that, 37 years in, Jane, you're still learning about children, care leavers, and yourself, isn't it? And it's that constant learning.
Yeah.
You said something that I thought was fantastic. We need, and this is a little bit my experience of some of the things I've seen, we need an ecosystem, not an ego system. what does ego look like in this work, and what does the ecosystem look like when it's working?
Okay, so what does ego look like? Ego, so it can look a little bit. It can look a little bit like what I just said, which is it's to do with meeting my own needs. This is more about me. This is more about me than it is about meeting the needs of the children. And of course, that can be quite hard to pick up because professional helpers are identified with the notion of being a helper, like we're here to help somebody else. And the kind of culture and expectation of professional helpers might be that you can cope, you're professional, you're strong, you have skills, you're here to help others. And the ego thing can be about serving the need to be a helper rather serving the need to empower. Because if I'm too preoccupied with being a helper, how am I really going to help somebody else develop their own skills and attributes to not need me anymore? Who am I going to help? Who am I if I'm not a helper? Is that going to inhibit me facilitating their growth? So that's one way in which ego can show up, and it's double layered. It's about the professional identity, and it's about the I don't have any needs. I'm the helper. I'm here to help them. So it can show up in those ways where people become very defended and very keen to promote their own competence, and that can conspire to make them less competent because they're not tending to the things that are their own needs. So that's one way about ego, I think.
So is it when, say, on the floor in a home, in the homes, actually doing too much for the children and actually they're centering themselves rather than looking what is really helpful for the child and being very identified as the helper?
Doing too much. I'm not sure. I'm not sure I would describe it as doing too much for the children, because some of our children's needs are primitive and profound. So if we are accurately identifying the needs of our children, that might mean that we're doing quite a lot for them. And of course, we could dig in. We could spend a long time digging into detail of what that looks like and what that means. But so it's not so much. I wouldn't describe it as doing too much. I would describe it more as needing to be seen as the person who is. It's not so much about what you do for the kids, it's what you think that makes you look like when you're doing it for the kids. Because if you're more preoccupied with what I look like rather than is it really helping the kids, is it really meeting the needs of the kids, well, again, we're aiming at the wrong target.
And that's quite a difficult line to travel because at the end of every day you've got to write down how great you were with the kids when you do your photos and be seen to be doing the right things to offset. So it is quite a difficult line to tread, I guess. And also, sometimes doing the right thing instead of doing something obvious. It's sitting on the sofa and having a cuddle with a child that needs it, or going for a long walk when you've got all the other things to do. But actually, it's about being there. So I guess so. You're just saying not ego. It's got to be really, really about being part of that team and be making sure everything we do is for the child.
Primary task. Primary task. What are we here for? We are here to identify the needs of the child and figure out a way to meet them. So if we're properly focused and rooted in that as our mission, well then, if we also bring a humility about sometimes I'm going to really nail that. Sometimes I'm going to really nail that. I bring skills, I bring an intention, I bring compassion, and we're focused on meeting the needs of the children, and we're going to put a bunch of stuff in place to meet the needs of the children, and sometimes we're going to really nail it and get it right. That's what we're here for. But humility says sometimes we're going to get it wrong, because sometimes I might trip over my own more primitive needs. I might trip over some of that stuff. I might trip over the skills that I don't yet have and need to develop. However, if we can be honest enough and humble enough to know that sometimes we're not going to get it quite right, that's how we learn. And if we have Maya Angelou, right? When we know better, we can do better. That's a truncating of a very famous quote. But when we know better, we can do better. If we're constantly looking for how we can know better in order to inform us about how to do better, and if that's the foundation of our primary task, which is to serve the children, well, then our mistakes become gold. The, you know, the moments in which we could have done better, and now we know. Now oh my God, now I realize what I just did. Okay, now I know. So now I can do better. We don't need to feel crushed when we realize we could have done better if we're really committed to an awareness about, okay, got it. That didn't go well. That didn't go well. I thought it was gonna, or I don't really know why it didn't go well, but let me think about that. Let me reflect on it. Let me figure it out, because once I know better, I can do better. And we're here to serve the children. So I'd really encourage a kind of self-compassion about that, as well as taking a real responsibility for who am I, how am I showing up, what can I truly bring to serve the children. Only we individually can take a responsibility for that. At the same time, let's be kind to ourselves. You know, you've got a kindness code thing going on, so let's be kind to ourselves about actually what we're stepping up to do is incredibly challenging. Some of what our children bring is incredibly painful, and that spreads. So we are in proximity to sometimes overwhelming pain, and we feel some of that. Now, what we feel of the pain of our children is only a fraction of what they live with every day. So again, let's have a humility about whenever we feel a bit overwhelmed or burdened. This is still good news, because we're getting closer to how the child lives every day. And if that speaks to us about what the child's needs are, then again, we're better placed to meet those needs. But so that, you know, it's all tied up in primary task, humility, honesty, self-compassion, commitment to doing better at all times. And when we know better, we can do better. So when we realize we've got something wrong, if we bring honesty and humility to recognize it and pay attention to it, then we know better and we can do better. So hence the use supervision, show up for supervision, go to therapy, do the self-care stuff. Self-care is not a nice to have, it's an essential. Otherwise your own needs will become overwhelming and will get in the way. That's how I think it shows up on the shop floor.
Wow, that was really
Yeah.
beautiful.
Sorry.
Humility is not a word that kind of get used as much. I think the idea that we get things wrong, but also that we get things wrong, but it's just a whole part of learning. It's like life, isn't it? We do things wrong, but it's such an unbelievably difficult job, because fundamentally you're going to get things wrong. No matter, even if you've been in the business, you've been helping children for 37 years, you're still not always going to get it right. And I think that becomes very difficult, because people are so desperate to get it right and really want to. But I think it's that understanding and being kind to ourselves as well.
So the thing I'd say about that, and also just to speak to the ecosystem thing as well. So children, my experience is our children are so forgiving, actually. If I've been in that moment where I realise I don't know what to do, or what I just did wasn't helpful and I could have done it better, if I realise I've got it wrong in some way, then in those moments where I've acknowledged that to the child and I've apologised, it's like, dude, that shouldn't have happened, or I'm sorry I shouted at you, or you know, whatever it is, you didn't deserve that. I'll tell you a quick story. To illuminate it. So one of the many things I've done over 37 years is I fostered. And this one particular morning, I woke up and I was proper grumpy. I was proper burdened with something. Now, actually, that something was to do with the social worker, the supervising social worker for the service I was in. Obviously, I'm not going to give any details, but and this is just the nature of the relationship as well. But and the little guy we were fostering, we were having breakfast, and he was doing something, and he did need to stop what he was doing. So I kind of went through inviting him, he needed to stop. And then because of where I was, I shouted at him. I was too harsh. And I knew I'd been too harsh when he's sitting and tears start dropping into his breakfast, just quietly. And you know, then I've got two options. I can either feel really bad and get defensive and shout at him again because he's making me feel bad and he just needs to pull himself together. I could go that way, I suppose. But instead, my attentiveness to his behavior, but him being that just in touch with his own emotions and letting me see it, is what helped me to go, okay, hang on a minute. And And I said, I'm sorry, I was too harsh. You do need to stop what you're doing. You did need to stop what you're doing, but I was too harsh. That wasn't fair. I'm sorry. And here's the complexity of it, because he goes, okay. But then he says, because I'd explained a bit, I just kind of woke up grumpy. This isn't your fault. This isn't your fault. This is me. I'm sorry. And then he says, so what were you grumpy about? Now, here's a boundary, okay? Because it's exactly right that I take responsibility for what I could have done better. But when he wants to try and fix that for me, when he, given all of his background and so on, feels like somehow he needs to step up, become the adult, become the parent maybe, or he has a responsibility. That's when me, from a very grounded position, I have to hold that boundary and go, well, that's for me to figure out. That's not for you to worry about. I'm okay. Actually, let's get on and get ready for school. Thanks for asking. I'll take care of that. No worries.
Really interesting couple of things. I think learning to apologise, which I don't think has been part of the parent or the authority to the child. School, or it doesn't happen that often, but it's really powerful to apologise to a child and say it's okay to get it wrong, because I think that's a good learning for them. But really that second part of it, that it would be easy if you're working at home saying, oh, I was grumpy because this happened. Our children don't need to know our stuff, do they? And that's a really good second learning, because you kind of want to be empathetic and kind to the child, but putting our stuff on our children who have so much, they just need to know that they're loved and cared for. They don't need to know what we're bringing. And I think that's a really good learning there, isn't it?
Absolutely right. And of course, we as adults in that kind of system are so at risk of tipping into recreating the dynamic that the child may have come from. And again, that could be a whole other conversation about how that happens, the invitations for each of us to be pulled a little out of shape. Because what we're trying to achieve is being our best selves, rooted and grounded in this present moment, being trauma informed, having a reflective response to what we can see in the behavior of the child, recognizing that needs underpin the behavior of the child. That's what we're trying to achieve. But there are so many invitations to get pulled out of that place and pinged off into somewhere that's way less helpful. And some of those invitations come from the child and the world they've known, but some of them come from our own inner worlds and the worlds we've known that might be informed by our childhoods. We're back to what you said about when you sit in interviews for people bring sad stories. So that's we're quite helpfully going around in loops here about why we're going around in loops that reinforce why we have to know ourselves and take responsibility for what we bring in all kinds of ways, at all kinds of levels, and in the moment, because stuff changes like that. Let's, just trying to keep up with our kids where they are emotionally in order to serve their needs moment to moment. That can change like that, let alone what's going on for us individually. So the ecosystem thing is about all of us in all of our roles, no matter what position we're in the system around the child, whether that's face-to-face direct work or whether it's more strategic, a more kind of senior leadership role, we're all just in the system to serve the children. And we will all bring our stuff. We will all be impacted and influenced and invited to be pulled out of shape by all of the stuff, I keep coming back to its pain. Part of what I wrote about was that the children bring pain, we bring pain. If we become overwhelmed by the pain, we erode our chances of staying rooted, grounded in this present moment, focused on the needs of the child, and how can we meet them? We get pulled out of that place. So the ecosystem ideally is a bunch of people who are driven by the primary task of identifying the needs of the children, figuring out ways of meeting them, developing ourselves constantly to bring the skills and attunement necessary to perform that task, and staying in great shape in order to be present in that moment and keep showing up as our best selves. The ecosystem isn't about ego at all. It's not about how can that system meet my needs. It's my individual responsibility to meet my needs. The system might provide some environment and some opportunity to help me, but your organization could lay on the best training and reflective supervision. And if I either literally don't show up or I turn up in the room, but I don't bring myself, I'm not availing myself of the opportunity to develop. And some of what you're providing might 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 not be the right environment for some of the depth of what is mine. So I might need to go somewhere else and tend to that. So the ecosystem is everybody doing their best to hold all of that together and create something greater than the sum of our parts.
We actually provide a completely outside separate counsellor that the team can access for personal counselling. It's not a supervision. They obviously, I think we talk about work, it's a big part of their lives, and it's lovely to get the kind of reassurance from you that that is a really good thing to do, and I'm going to double down on that because it's so important if people see it as a growth opportunity to bring their best selves and be really present with our kids. So that was amazing. And kind of going on to that, so we bring our you're saying our contribution to a child's life might be fleeting, but it can still be meaningful.
Yeah.
For someone early in their career who's desperate to make a difference, and I feel like actually when we get new youth mentors, I think they're going to make this immediate difference. And actually, the kids that we work with, like all teenagers, because we're predominantly teenagers, right? We have quite often 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and then it might be 3 steps back, and 5 steps back. That's how it is. So how do we, for the people who are coming into it and really want to see the difference, and I have done a bit of reading on this, and often what we do today might have the impact in 10 or 20 years' time, isn't it? It's not. It's not going to always be immediate. So how do we help people who are coming into it to understand the impact, and that only might be small and fleeting, but what they're doing is still important?
Well, again, it all links in because it's about humility. It's about the humility of we show up, we've come into this world to make a difference. We want to help. So we want to look for the evidence that we're helping. We want to look for the evidence that we're helping the child grow in some way and feel good about, I made a contribution to that. That's why we're here. However, the harsh realities of what our children have been through and how that will resonate and ripple for them throughout the rest of their lives. Our children become adults. And some of these things I'm saying, come from care experienced adults, Your Life, Your Story, Jackie McCartney, Rachel W. They talk a lot about the children we serve become adults. And when we're working with children, it's helpful to remember that our children become adults. So we're not only serving the child, we're working to serve the adult they become. So those resonances and ripples throughout the child's life, even if I'm working with a child for 5 years, and how many of us get to work with the child for 5 years in the care system? Put that into the context of 50, 55, 60, 85 years, and even 5 years is fleeting. Now, more likely, it's 2 years, it might be only 2 months, it could be 2 hours. So what do we do? Your question is, how do we help somebody who's coming into work? How do we help them understand how to make a meaningful contribution, even though it might be quite fleeting? Part of making it meaningful is to have the humility to know that even 2 years is fleeting in the lifetime of a child and the adult they become, who has to constantly live with and find ways to harness and move forward with what happened to them as children. So how do we do how can we most help in that 5 years, 2 years, 2 months, 2 hours? It's back to that bringing the best of me. How can I genuinely do my best today? What does my real genuine best today look like? Because only I can know whether I'm really genuinely doing my best. Nobody else can really see whether I'm half-hearted, have I ticked the box? I suppose let's talk about the systemic stuff. Have I done what the Ofsted check sheet says I need to have done? And have I done it with warmth or have I done it begrudgingly? There's ways of doing your best. There's of doing what's necessary, doing your best, doing what's going to meet the needs of the child. So again, if I give you a quick example of a foster parent who had a child brought to their home, not much notice, effectively an emergency situation. The child was brought to the home that day, and 15-year-old girl and foster mum sitting on the sofa, chat, getting on really well. And there's already that little bit of rapport building. You know, the foster mum reports the child looking like she feels like she could be safe here. And they perhaps spend 4 hours together, at which point the social worker comes back and says, right, we found an in-house placement, bye. And that 15-year-old, the foster parent reports in that moment, the 15-year-old, the change in the face, in the eyes of the 15-year-old, who just when she was beginning to breathe a little bit in terms of I might be okay here, suddenly she's off again. Now it's even later in the day, later in the evening. She doesn't know where she's going, and what does our foster mum feel about that? What can she do about that? Can't do anything to change the decision. But did she genuinely bring all of herself to this 15-year-old who felt seen and like she had the potential of being loved here? Did she already pick up within 2, 3, 4 hours that she felt she could be loved? Because if she felt she could be loved here, then that reinforces that she's lovable. You know, even, do you see what I mean? Even in that super, super fleeting moment, if we bring our best, we can make an impact for a child.
That is quite a heartbreaking story, but I guess that the temporary foster parent needed to just go, hey, I still gave the best bit for 4 hours. And actually interesting, on to the next question, because I've spoken to quite a few care leavers, been looking into it, and it feels like that is where, it almost makes me tear up just thinking about some of the stories, because one gentleman, Sam Gardner, who's quite active on TikTok and LinkedIn now,
Yep.
and he's speaking about it, and that stuff really hits home. And he had all these foster breakdowns, 2 divorces happened, and he just got moved on. And it just, hearing the lived experiences of adult care leavers is unbelievably powerful. And this is the next part of your journey too, isn't it, Jane?
Well, it's certainly something I'm enjoying right now. So I don't really do social media apart from LinkedIn, and I joined LinkedIn about 4 years ago. And I joined LinkedIn because I'd left a directorship and I was thinking I'd go independent. And I've never had a plan in my working life. I've never had a plan. Can't say I've had a career because I've never had a plan. I just follow my nose to wherever looks kind of interesting and excellent, actually, as well. I've always been interested in how can I make my best contribution? How can we collectively make something better? So when I'm kind of thinking, what am I going to do next? How can I make my best contribution? I think, well, I'm going to probably have to do something online. So I joined LinkedIn. But what I find on LinkedIn is I am now connected with hundreds of mature care experienced people. And what social media has done has made that world available, I suppose. These guys, oh my word, it's not just the stories, it's not just the insights to the lived experience, it's the skills and the talents that are drawn and honed and made available from those earlier experiences. And because these guys are mature, then their brains have fully developed. They're a little further away in terms of time span from the most difficult events of their childhood. They're perhaps settled into their adult lives, so they have a bit more security and stability from which to speak of the really difficult stuff. There's a bunch of reasons, I think, why those older guys, and I'm talking, I suppose, late 20s, 30s onwards, if I think about most of the people I'm connected with. That's not to, of course, younger guys have a lot to contribute as well. It just comes from a slightly different place. And so I have seen, in my 37 years, I have seen nothing more transformational for the children's social care sector than the voices of these mature care experienced people. And so when I found myself on LinkedIn and found myself connecting with and learning from and listening to and watching these guys, what I realized is part of my best contribution now is to amplify them. That's where the biggest, most powerful shift in my experience, in my opinion, has come from and is coming from. And actually, again, I'm going to give credit for that to one of those people. And I just saw a post that says, if you really want to be an ally and an advocate, amplifiers don't drown us out. And that hit home. And again, this links back to the ego thing, right? So amplifiers don't drown us out. What an easy mistake that would be to make. Look at me talking about how these these guys, what they need, what they've been through, poor them. But I know how to help. It was such an easy mistake to make, to drown them out. Whereas actually, and let's amplify the learning based on the skills and talents that those guys are bringing. So yeah, I do lots of that kind of stuff just on LinkedIn, but also yet to be broadcast and published. I can't wait to get it out. But Sarah Jacobi and I have been recording interviews for a new podcast, which is all about celebrating the successful adult lives of some of those people we're both connected with. So let's wait until it's out there and available. But I'm dead excited to see that
Have you
come
got a name yet, Jane?
Yeah, it's called the Emerging Changemakers podcast.
I love that. And because I want to be sharing this with my team and with my people that I've actually I'm interviewing Sam soon, and I've had Bethany Dixon on as well.
Oh, great!
Because I just, for me, because I've only been in this sector for 16 months now, and it has been the hugest learning curve. It's been humbling. It's been sad at times. It's been eye-opening. But for me, hearing care leavers' stories was where it just hit home so quickly, and I want to share their stories because I want to learn, but I love for other people who are coming into this and with all the great intentions and wanting to be kind, but it's the best learning when you're hearing what it was really like and how it was for these people. So sharing these stories. So I cannot wait to be able to share your podcast because it's all around adult care leavers who have really showing the people that work in the care homes at the moment that to have aspirations for our children that we're looking after, because it's possible, isn't it?
The mainstream media headlines are always about the homelessness, the addiction, the unemployment, and of course the statistics about the people who are experiencing all of those elements of life that needs attention. We need to do better with that. But I'm going to quote one of those care experienced adults, Rachel from LinkedIn, who says, so grew up in care, in many ways shouldn't still be alive. And whenever I'm referring to these care experienced adults, I'm only ever repeating stuff that's in the public domain. I'm not disclosing anything. So Rachel will talk about, has no business being alive, really, 50 this year. Who'd have thought she'd have made it? She was told, and feared many times that she wouldn't make it beyond her teens, let alone into adulthood. But also has then gone on to work in the children's social care sector for 30 years in schools and as a foster parent and delivering consultancy and delivering training, making that contribution, having harnessed those earlier experiences. It's amazing. I've lost my track. What was I going to say? What was I going to say something about what she taught me? What was your question?
We were talking about your podcast being about celebrating and creating, and so that the people that work in care have better aspirations for it.
That's it. Perfect. Yeah, that's it. Okay, so Rachel, sitting in a room as a participant in some training, nobody else in the room knows her background or her story, and the trainer says, of course, these kids that we're talking about, they don't make it. They don't make it. Or sometimes we'll hear
I want to jump up and down for her and go, yes, they do. Believe in us. Because
exactly. And of course we hear you'll never amount to much. Kids like Stephen Russell the other day put a post up saying how he was told, well, kids like you don't do well in GCSEs. And of course the question is, well, who cares? What is he good at? If kids like him don't do well in GCSEs, well, then that's an indictment of the GCSE, not the kid. So, or
on education, which is not right for most children, let alone the children with neurodivergence and or in care. But yeah,
right.
But that idea of exploring what can help their heart sing and allow them to become the adults that they need, that they want to be, and they're able to be.
Yeah, and if the adults in the system around the child can't see a bright future for our kids, does that make it easier or harder for our kids to imagine a bright future for themselves? So what are we doing? Here again, it's full circle back to ego. Why am I, as a teacher or a carer, only seeing that these kids are going to end up in prison or addicted or homeless, when there are so many stats. The majority of our kids do not do that. You look at those horrible statistics and they need attention, but those statistics reflect that most of our kids do not end up that way. So where are the headlines about that? And if I want to be somebody who helps the really difficult kids, if I want to be somebody who's so self-sacrificing that I show up for the really, really challenging, environments because I'm so self-sacrificing, then I'm pigeonholing those children as being difficult and challenging who will never amount to anything because it serves my ego. What I need to do is show up as somebody who sees the potential in our children, who understands the needs that sit behind the behavior, get past the behavior, build trust. I need to be the person who allows the child to feel safe and sees an opportunity for themselves so that they can imagine their own futures. Otherwise, and I need to fade into the background. I need to fade into, being less important than what the child achieved for themselves, because we can't make our children achieve anything. This is Carl Rogers, right? You can only create the environment within which there is the opportunity for the individual to develop themselves. We can play really, really important parts in that, but we don't do it for them. And we have no business capping the aspiration and the opportunities for our children simply by bringing a belief. And if you can bring any belief you like, it doesn't take any money, it doesn't take any policy. If you can bring any belief that you want into what our kids can achieve, why would you bring a belief that they'll never amount to anything? How does that help? Are you really helping? Are you really serving?
Hold that belief that they won't amount to much. It will come out, doesn't it? Because when we believe something, it comes out in our behaviours and our communication. We're doing quite a lot in our homes, I think, to try and help. One of our children's really incredible horse rider, so she's been to a polo match. We've had another horse, and it's doing those kind of things. Say it's going to be okay. We're going to help you do the things that. It's lucky that she's got something she's deeply passionate about, but seeing the potential, and I guess giving them the pathway to say, hey, we can do everything we can to help you get there.
And by the way, too often we hear about those passions, those hobbies, those interests being used as sanctions. Right, now you're not going horse riding because you didn't hit a goal that we set for you, because you didn't do the thing we needed to do. Right, well, if we can't trust you to do that, then we can't trust you to go horse riding, which could be, it's an easy thing to say from a position of not understanding the needs of our children and being here to serve them. Because you didn't do well at school might be a reflection of the school environment, and you're perfectly capable of doing well at the horse riding stables because it's a different environment. You conflate the two, and what you're doing is withdrawing the opportunity for the child to thrive and to fly and to feel good about themselves because of what they've achieved. And
when I bought the homes, the previous owners sanctioned the children, if they didn't go to school, they weren't allowed to leave the house. And now it's like, you still get to go to swimming, gymnastics, the things that are going to make you exercise and positivity and things. So it's not taking away the things that make the kids' hearts sing is so important. We haven't got too much longer. I want to touch on too something that we've just signed up that you said you didn't want to come on to promote, but I think you should be shouting about, is Storyteller, which is something so beautiful. And in the age of digital, when photos and everything is all digital and can get lost in the ether, Storyteller is a digital vault for us to secure those memories, however long the children are with us. Tell us a little bit more about what that's all about, Jane.
Yeah, so Storyteller is a digital platform that can be accessed through a desktop or through an app on a mobile, so it ends up in the same place. That's for convenience for anybody using it. So it's a place to digitize memory box and life story work. At its most minimum, that's the job it does. As you just said, we live in an age where we shouldn't have to be relying on a shoebox of bits and pieces that can too easily be lost as the child moves through the system, or for the adult they become, moves out of the system and on and on and on. How are they going to hang on to? And some people do, but too often that stuff gets lost. And life story work too often simply doesn't get done with the child to help them understand their story as it has been and as it is now. And if it does get done, sometimes that gets lost too. Somebody said the other day, so we're working with a local authority, and one of their care experienced apprentices is involved in the project. And he tells the story again publicly of big roll of wallpaper of 2 years worth of intimate life story work, and it's lost, it's gone, never to be retrieved. So we can still do that kind of work, but we can also keep memories of it digitally. But then if you add in the possibility of storing and preserving video and audio and stuff like that, we can take responsibility for building the child's story coherently, richly, beautifully. And for me, really importantly, the child also then has the opportunity to contribute their own voice. So when we know when children and the adults they become go looking for their care records, whatever they get sent, and that's a whole other conversation, but whatever they get sent, the kids just can't find themselves in those records. They don't recognize themselves. Their perspective isn't really in there. Their experience, they might look at a piece of paper and remember an event or a meeting or something and go, well, I remember that happening, but that's not what I remember about it. That's not my experience. And not staying in touch with your brothers and sisters. So Storyteller offers a platform whereby it's a closed group. It's safe. It's not open to the internet. Where children and the trusted adults around those children can upload onto the platform video, audio, little text notes, and photos. And it all gets held in chronological order so that it builds a coherent story for the child. And the child can, the stories are named in the child's name. So we're telling, it's a constant reminder to everybody, we're telling this kid's story. It's their story. And if the child can upload their own stuff whenever they like, then without their perspective, it's not the whole story. So encouraging them to really be active participants in their own story helps them to imagine their own futures. And we're seeing amazing, honestly, talk about the stuff that makes my heart sing. We are seeing this having really positive benefits for the children using it right now. It's fab.
And also, what's the benefits in 20 years' time? When
Yeah.
I kind of came across, and we're looking at it, there's a cost implication. So I just thought I'd run it past the SLT. That was a 3-second decision. They were all like, no, this is amazing, this has to be done, because they take the photos and they get uploaded to the OneDrive, and where are they, and we save them we do a memory book when a child transitions away from our homes and things. But actually they were all just on board so much. And from what we're talking about adult care leavers, imagine if they had that to look back on. It would be absolutely beautiful.
Well, we heard recently about a 21-year-old, so born into a digital age, born in the 21st century, not a single photo of a childhood, not a single one, not in any format. How is that possible? Given what we know, given how we're supposed to be meeting the needs of our children and building their sense of self and identity and culture and heritage, and how does she have not a single photo when it's so easy? So, and of course, this is the thing, tech moves on, what's possible moves on, and systems sometimes lag behind what's possible. So we need to make it affordable, we need to make it easy to use, we need to make it available, and we need to genuinely...
So safe, like if they lose a phone. Remember we used to have things on hard drives, so we don't do that, we have them in the cloud. And then if people keep everything on their phone, but actually... And they might be, they might have quite transient lives. So to have it all known it's safe and kind of a separate place they can then go back to if they lose logins and things like that is amazing.
Yeah.
Jane, incredible work there. And this has been quite a beautiful conversation, actually, very calm and thoughtful. I've absolutely loved it. I've got one question to finish off. If you could raise aspirations for the children in our care by changing one belief held by the adults around them, what would it be?
Oh, so I'm going to quote another care experienced adult, Johnny Hoyle, right? Care leavers can, and do. There's no question about it. Raise your, don't think they can't. Who are we to say they can't? Kids like you don't. Kids like you can't. Forget that. Embed the mindset of care leavers can. And I know care leavers is a term as well, but kids in care, our kids who could not, because they are our kids, they are society's kids. If society sees fit to remove them from their families in service of protection of our children, we have to do better, and we have than they would have experienced leaving them behind, right? We have to, if we're going to remove them, we have to do better than leaving them behind. And if we're going to take responsibility and they're our children, then let's do as well as we would want for any of our children in society. So if I were to embed a single thing that enhances the aspirations for our children, I'm going to quote a care experienced adult, an adult who grew up in the care system, and say, care leaders can, comma, and do.
I love that, and what a perfect note to finish on. It's been an absolute joy, and again, so I'm loving this journey, and all these beautiful people are sharing incredible experiences and desperately want to make a difference, and are making a difference. So it's been an absolute pleasure. Jane, we're going to put your podcast link. When's it coming out?
We're still in stages of editing. We don't have a date for it being launched and coming out. So I don't have a link to give you right now for the podcast, but we will be chatting about it when it's available.
Fantastic. We're sharing all that on LinkedIn. There's a fantastic book, Kids in Care, How Can I Help? I've only just ordered it on Amazon. It hasn't come through yet, unfortunately. And we've got Storyteller, which is sounds like a beautiful transformational thing that's going on as well.
Yeah, and we definitely have a website for that, and I'd be more than happy to have a conversation and do a quick demo if anybody's interested in seeing whether that could serve the kids they're looking after. Happy to just have that chat.
We'll all be in the show notes. Thank you once again, Jane, and I'm sure we'll be in contact soon.
Yeah, we will. Pleasure, Carmel. Thank you.
Lovely. Thanks, Jane.